Today we're changing the oil in our 2006 Mercedes Benz C230 Sport. We've got our tools laid out over here, and we're getting ready to go up on the ramps. I like to change the oil when the engine is warm, that way it flows a little better. So here's our tools. We have a couple of drain pans. We've got the oil filter, 13mm socket for the drain plug, and an 8mm socket for the belly pan bolts. And we've got 8 quarts of the Mobil 1 European Car Formula 0W40 motor oil. So we're getting ready to pull up on the ramps now, and I'll show you how we do that. So this car is really low. I think it would probably be impossible to do without putting the car up on some ramps. So what I've got here is a mirror set up, and I'll just keep my eye on that as I'm pulling up on the ramps. So the hood latch is this little red handle right here under the dash. Just grab that and give it a tug, and you probably heard it come loose there. That makes this little gadget come out the front of the grill, safety latch. So you just pull that. Well, I need both hands. Okay, so now we're up on the ramps, and I've got something to lay on there to keep the concrete from hurting my back. And we're about to take the belly pan off. Okay, so we're into the car now, and here's our 8mm bolts on the plastic belly pan that runs under the bottom of the car. And this socket I'm using actually I think is a 5/16, but it does fit, so you can use that in a pinch instead of the 13mm. Okay, so here's our belly pan, and there's probably a more accurate name for it, but that's what I call it. The front 2 screws actually hold on. There's 2 belly pans under the car. This is the one toward the rear, and the front 2 screws actually hold on the back part of the other one, and it looks like there's 6 of them. Okay, new plan. I was not able to get the oil drain plug out. I guess the last time I put it in, I must have put it in really super tight, too tight. And on this model of car, the oil drain plug is really hard to get to anyway. I had to buy this certain type of socket to even be able to get in there and get on it. And when I bought the car, the drain plug was stripped off, so you know this type of socket worked good for that also, because I was able to go ahead and get it out. But even using this, it was starting to round off the drain plug. So we're going to use the Topsider. We're going to pump the oil out through the Dipstick Tube, which a lot of people are doing now. Seems to be the popular way to do it anyway. So I purchased this little unit, and the big advantage, there was a lot of these on the market, and I chose this one because it will hold 8 quarts, and so does this car. So, and I just like the look of it. It has a nice kind of retro look to it. It's super simple. I mean, it's basically just screwing this in as far as putting it together. Screwing this in, putting the tube on it. There's a little adapter that takes it from this larger tube to a smaller one that's a little stiffer and goes down the dipstick tube. And some people say they just, use the larger one to make it drain faster, but I'm going to use it the way that it's meant to be used first before I start to try to hot rod it or anything. So we're going to get this all hooked up, and this will be my first time to do this. We're going to drain the oil out using a Topsider. Alright, so we're back and we're about to replace the oil in our car here. It's a C230 Sport. We've got the hood up in the service position by punching that little red button right there. And that makes it go up a little further. Makes it a lot easier to work with, especially if you're going to replace the battery, which is right there. Gets the hood up out of your way. We've got our Topsider down here, and I've pumped it 32 times. It's between 30 and 40 is what they recommend. So we've got the clamp locked off there, which is going to hold the vacuum pressure there. I've got my oil dipstick out here, and I've also measured and marked the length of the dipstick against this tube. And probably can't see it on the video, but there's a oh, there it is. There's a black mark right there. That's going to let me know when I've hit the bottom of the oil pan, and then we're going to go apparently 2 or 3 inches beyond that. So right now I'm going to go ahead and pop this little gadget off, the engine cover here. That tube is very unruly. It just constantly wants to move around, so I'll be wiping that off before I stick it in my dipstick tube. Make sure it doesn't have a bunch of dirt on it. We'll lay this off to the side here. Still got we got our 7 quarts of oil, and we got our filter. I typically use a man, but in this case we're going to use the mobile. And I like to keep the owner's manual and some things laid out here. That's the instructions on how to use the top loader there. This is our oil filter, and I'll be replacing that after I get the oil started draining out of the tube here. And of course that's our dipstick. There's the tube. Obviously make sure when you do this that if your car has a transmission dipstick also, or just make sure you've got the oil dipstick and not something else, because otherwise that's going to really ruin your day. I'm also going to take this off so that once I release the vacuum pressure, here's what it looks like on the underside of it. Not too bad. That way when I release the pressure on the vacuum pressure on the Topsider, there'll be a place for the air to enter the crankcase as it's pulling the oil out. So we'll get that done, and I need to wipe my hand off before I handle the tube. But I'll be back and we'll take a look at pulling the oil out. Okay, so we're back. I've got the tube put down in the oil dipstick tube, and as I said, I wiped it off good, because you don't want to put dirt down in your engine. That would defeat the purpose of changing the oil. So I'm going to try to release this valve now, and we'll see what happens here, hopefully. Okay. So yeah, I didn't feel like I was building up any vacuum, so I did something wrong there. I'll have to check on that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just tightened the two lids down on there a little better. You can see the hose is flat now, and as I started pumping, it started pulling oil up through there. So it's going to work. Let's see if I can go ahead and take this off now. See what happens. Yeah, we're not holding the vacuum for some reason. Alright, so we got a good flow of oil going here. Turns out that I had installed the gasket on the larger part here, the handle part. I had put the gasket on in the wrong place. There's really only two ways you can do it, and so you have a 50% chance of getting it right, but those odds were not high enough for me. And you'll know when you get a good suction though, because when I had it on wrong, it was practically effortless to pump it, and once I had it on the proper way, I could definitely feel a resistance on it. And so put 32 pumps on it. I put our little Topsider down here on the floor, on the ground, so that along with the vacuum pressure, gravity will also help us to get the oil out of there. And so the next step will be to change the filter, which is basically just taking that little cap off right there. And once I get it off, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, our tube is pretty much empty. So hopefully the engine is pretty much empty. There's a little bit caught right there. But what we're going to do now is measure the oil out. Unlike the clear plastic extracting pumps, you can't tell on this one exactly how much is in there. So I'm gonna pour it out into this bucket and make sure we got the whole 8 quarts. And then we'll also weigh, once it's in there, I'll weigh it, and then next time I can just check the weight to make sure that it's all out of there. So I'll do that, and we'll come back and go ahead and put our oil in. We may use the usual place here, or we may just put the oil in where the filter normally goes. That's actually a little easier because you don't have to fool with the front on and some things like that. And also we'll get our new filter mounted up. Okay, we're back, and I emptied the oil out of the Topsider into this bucket, which has the capacity measurements on it, and that ring that you see around the top there would be 8 quarts. So we only had about 5 quarts in there. So I guess what happened is I didn't build up enough suction and it stopped pulling it. But I just started the process over again, and it looks like we got a good flow here. Probably better than the first time, actually. So we'll check back on that and make sure we get our full 8 quarts, and we'll also see how much that weighs for our future reference. I've got our new filter out here, and we're going to be using the Mobile One. It's a synthetic type filter, and usually what I do when I buy oil is I check with the 3 closest auto parts stores, and just whoever's running a sale, that's where I'll typically end up going. And in this case, we got the filter free, and it's a pretty pricey filter, so that was a good deal. I would probably most like to use a factory Mercedes filter, but the dealership is about, well, it's clear across town, 30 minutes to an hour if traffic's bad. And it seems like every time I go to change the oil, it just kind of sneaks up on me, and I wind up needing to get it kind of fast. So so far I've used the Mobile One and the Man, which is also factory recommended. So anyway, I'm going to let this drain a little bit longer. I neglected to time how long it took to drain that 5 quarts. I would say probably about 30 minutes. So hopefully this will be done here in a few more minutes. And in the meantime, I'll mount this new filter up. The filter comes with these rings several more than you actually need, but this filter works with different cars, so I believe, if I remember right, there's only 3 rings on this particular one. So anyway, I'm going to get those off. I can't do that while I'm holding the camera, so we'll get that mounted up and then hopefully start putting some oil in here pretty soon. Okay, so we're back, and I guess the problem was I didn't pump up enough vacuum on it, because I set it back up and we got exactly 8 quarts. 2 gallons would be that little embossed ring around the top there, and that's almost exactly what we got. So I'm confident we got the vast majority of the oil out of it. 8 quarts is what the capacity is listed as, and that weighs right at 15 pounds if anyone's interested in that. And we got our filter out. One thing I like to do is just double check. I've already run the number M1C 253A online, make sure that matched up, but I also like to just look at it. You know, you can see that's exactly the same height, which is important. This one, the used one, might be just a hair larger in diameter, but that's to be expected once it's saturated in the oil. It's pretty close to exactly the same thing. On the rings, I typically use, the black ones are the ones that came off, and I typically use, you know, the larger one there on this larger portion right there, and the smaller one on this one right here. And so those are pretty hard to mess up, because it's pretty obvious where they go. This one down here is the one you want to be careful with, the larger one. Make sure you get that back exactly on that, not on the next one down, because if you do it on this one, you're going to get, it almost looks like that's where it should go. I can tell you from experience that that's not where it goes. It goes right here. So we'll get that put on, and then this just simply stabs right down on there. There's nothing that holds it other than just the friction, and then once it's screwed in, you know, it's going to hold it. I have never been able to distinguish if there was a top or bottom on these. I don't think there is. I've never been able to find anyone or any information that would say there is. So I just, so far it's been working. Haven't had any problem. It looks like, I don't know why there would be a top and bottom. I mean, it looks exactly the same. So anyway, we'll get that stabbed on there, and then we'll start putting our oil in. Alright, we've got our new filter loaded in there. You can see I got the new rings on there. Like I said, there's nothing really that holds it in. This seals off around the top. Just the friction holds it in there until you screw it back in its home right there. I will say that when you're putting these 2 top rings on, like I said, this one is a little bit, just a little larger. And as you work it down over this one, make sure it doesn't drop into this the first seat there, because getting it out of there is a bad problem. It's hard. And so you want to use your bigger ring first. As you bring it down over here, make sure you don't let it seat. You bring it all the way down around here. And then the smaller one goes here. We have these 2 left over. I think they were for the probably the 4-cylinder version of this car. So you get those for free. You can do something with them. That's back on where it was, and we're ready to go back on with it. A lot of people use dental picks to get the old rings off. I find these little paint can openers work pretty good, and so because I don't have the dental picks. All right, so we're gonna put our oil in, and that should finish this project. So hopefully you got some decent information out of this, and it helped you a little bit. And if so, I hope that you like it, and maybe subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
Alright, so we got everything back together here, and I just wanted to add a few thoughts. Back at the beginning of this, I had said that in the past when I changed the oil, if I put in the full 8 quarts, that the dipstick would show over full. And at that time I was draining the oil out of the bottom of the engine. This time, of course, I used the extraction method using the Topsider. And as you can see, I did get a full 8 quarts this time. Now I put 7 quarts in, just check the dipstick, and it shows 1 quart low. So I would say, I would deduce from that if you drain the oil out of the drain plug on the bottom of the engine, you're leaving a quart of oil in the engine somehow. Using the suction method apparently is better. It's going to get more oil out, so you might want to keep that in mind. I also mentioned that you could put oil in at this point where the filter comes out. There is a slight advantage to that in that it's a bigger place to hit. You don't necessarily have to use a funnel if you do that, but the oil actually doesn't go in quite as fast there. It goes in faster if you just use a funnel. And I use this one right here. It goes in faster if you put it in there. And a downside to adding it here at the filter is if it does run over, it's going to run right down onto the fan belts, and it's going to be a mess to clean up, and it could cause your belts to squeak for a while and things like that. Another thing I should have done is put a pan under the engine. Even though I wasn't going to drain the oil, I should have put a pan under there, and that would have kept me from having to put a pile of oil absorbing kitty litter down there. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is, after you do your change, drain the oil out of the bottles and save it. If you keep it as the same weight and you save up a quart or half a quart, it's clean oil. You can use it just like, and you paid for it, so you might as well use it. Since I have 3 vehicles, I will drain mine all into one and call it mix. And so it's probably not oil that I would want to use in this car, but you can use it in your lawnmower. You could use it to lube your chainsaw chain, or something like that. So you want to make the most of your money and keep the earth in good shape if we can. So I just want to add that, and thanks for watching again.
So this car is really low and be really tough to do with that, putting it up on ramps. So what I do is I have